Have you ever looked in the mirror and seriously wondered, is this it? Is the person staring back at me completely finished growing? Are our personalities just permanently fixed, stamped into our DNA from birth? Or can we actually rewrite who we are? Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving deep into the actual science of personality. We'll explore the real stories of how we change, whether it's truly possible to do it on purpose, and exactly what a complete, systematic breakdown of intentional personality change looks like. Think about one of the most famous stories of personality transformation ever written, Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol. You know the story. After a terrifying night with three spirits, Ebenezer Scrooge totally flips his harsh, penny-pinching ways. He literally transforms from a tight-fisted antagonist into this extraordinarily generous, compassionate benefactor, basically overnight. But that's fiction. It's an extreme literary transformation. The real question we have to ask ourselves is, can real, everyday people actually change their core traits just because they want to? Well, you might be surprised to hear that an overwhelming majority of people actually want to change their personality traits. Whether that's wanting to be way more outgoing for a new business venture, or maybe more conscientious to crush it in school, the urge to rewrite our own code is just a deeply human thing. But for the longest time, science basically told us this desire was a total pipe dream. Let's look at why. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the myth versus the reality. To really grasp how we can change today, we first have to look at what experts used to believe and why that old science was completely thrown out. For most of the 20th century, psychology was dominated by something called the plaster hypothesis. Back in 1890, the famous psychologist William James boldly claimed that by age 30, human character is set like plaster. He genuinely believed our personalities were locked in during early adulthood, with almost zero room for fundamental change after that. But here's the absolute best news. The last 30 years of rigorous longitudinal research have systematically proven him completely wrong. The plaster hypothesis is, empirically, totally busted. Now, what's really interesting here is the fascinating nuance between stability and change. Science shows us two distinct things are happening at the exact same time. First up, we've got rank order stability. Basically, if you're more conscientious than your friends at age 25, you'll probably still be more conscientious than them at age 50. Your rank, compared to your peers, stays pretty stable. But on the flip side, we have mean level change, and this means your absolute level of a trait absolutely shifts over time. Driven by biological maturation and just, life experience, you are fundamentally a different person at 40 than you were at 20. And guess what? People really want this change. Researchers surveyed folks using the big 5 personality dimensions, so extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness. And they found that a staggering 87% of people want to intentionally increase their positive traits. Almost everyone wants to deliberately evolve. So if the desire is obviously there, and the old plaster myth is officially busted, what are the actual biological mechanics of how we change? Which brings us to Section 2, the mechanics of change. Let's move past the theory and get right into the biological and environmental mechanics. How do our traits actually evolve over time on a purely physical level? Well, it all starts in the brain. You've probably heard the old analogy that a kid's brain is like a sponge, right? That's because when we're young, the innate plasticity of our neural circuits is sky high, and it takes very little energy to learn new things. But as adults, we absolutely still have this amazing ability. It's called neuroplasticity and synaptic potentiation. Our brains literally never lose the capacity to adapt and build new connections. The catch? It takes more metabolic energy. It physically takes more oxygen and glucose for an adult brain to forge those new pathways. But that capacity, it is always there. And our environment directly interacts with this biology. There's this genuinely mind-blowing study from McGill University on behavioral epigenetics, and it involves mother rats. Researchers found that mothers who naturally lick and groom their pups a lot literally alter the DNA expression of those pups. This physical change to their DNA downregulates the pup's stress receptors, which means they grow up much better equipped to handle stress. It's an incredible story that perfectly illustrates how early environmental experiences, like a mother's grooming, can physically alter genetic expression and literally shape lifelong personality traits. But hey, it's not just about early childhood environments. As adults, major life events naturally force our personalities to shift. Take a look at the massive longitudinal data charting event-related changes across the big 5 traits. For instance, the data clearly shows that getting married is systematically associated with a decrease in openness and neuroticism, but it brings increases in conscientiousness and agreeableness. Basically, Taking on that new social role literally socializes the partners into entirely new trade baselines. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact same concept happening in the workplace. When you step into a new employment role, it demands completely new behaviors from you. You suddenly have to be punctual, manage complex tasks, and work efficiently. The data from thousands of individuals systematically shows that starting a new job steadily drives up our conscientiousness and emotional stability over time. The external environment forces a behavioral change, which then eventually solidifies into a core personality trait. Let's move to Section 3, systematically breaking down volitional change. So we know that aging changes us, and our environment definitely changes us. But what if you don't want to just sit around waiting for a new job or a marriage to transform you? What if you want to intentionally rewrite your traits starting today? Let's systematically break down volitional change. Research highlights 3 highly effective interventions. First up, cognitive behavioral therapy, which strongly reduces neuroticism by actively rewiring your rumination patterns. Second, act as if behavioral practice, which we're going to break down in just a second. And third, life structure changes. This means deliberately creating external routines and getting accountability partners to force behavioral consistency. You're literally building a physical scaffold around your life to shape your new baseline traits. Let's take a much closer look at that act as if method. This is basically the highly scientific version of fake it till you make it. The systematic breakdown here is simple, but it is rigorous. Step 1, identify the exact trait you want to adopt, let's say extroversion. Step 2, define very small, highly specific weekly steps to physically pull your behavior toward that trait. And step 3, actively fake the behaviors until they become habitual. The core idea is that acting precedes being. You literally behave like an extrovert long before you naturally feel like one. A fantastic, super practical tool for this is if-then planning. Say you want to boost your sociability. You essentially give your brain a pre-programmed script. Something like, if I am sat on a train near a stranger, then I will make an attempt to start a conversation. When that specific condition happens, the behavior is automatically triggered. And the golden rule here, especially if you deal with social anxiety, is to reappraise that physical sensation of anxiety as excitement. Your heart rate is jumping not because you're absolutely terrified, but because you are pumped to practice your new trait. Now, to actually make this stick long-term, we have to look back at the neuroscience. Overriding a lifetime of ingrained bad habits, like automatically being highly neurotic or closed off, requires 3 crucial things. First, high intention, meaning you know exactly what you want. Second, sharp attention to your triggers, so you can actually catch yourself before you fall back into those old patterns. And third, relentless persistence. Because remember, it costs your adult brain real, literal metabolic energy to forge these new pathways. It's going to feel exhausting at first, but that persistence is what makes the change permanent. And here is the hard proof. In a 4-month study, researchers took people who actively wanted to be more extroverted. When you look at the data for the intervention group, these are the folks who actively created those implementation intentions and rigorously practiced the act-as-if steps. You see a steady, upward climb in their trait extroversion compared to the control group. They didn't just temporarily change their mood, they successfully and measurably altered their core personality levels. Which brings us right back full circle. You are not set in plaster. You possess the biological neuroplasticity to literally rewrite your brain, and you now have the scientific toolkit to systematically shift your traits. And hey, you don't even need 3 terrifying ghosts to visit you in the middle of the night to kickstart your transformation. So the question I want to leave you with today is this. Who do you actually want to become? And what external structures are you going to build today to make your very own Christmas Carol moment happen? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.